The Patience of Ordinary Things, Pat Schneider. It is a kind of love, is it not? How the cup holds the tea, how the chair stands sturdy and foursquare, how the floor receives the bottoms of shoes or toes, how soles of feet know where they're supposed to be. I've been thinking about the patience of ordinary things, how clothes wait respectfully in closets, and soap dries quietly in the dish, and towels drink the wet from the skin of the back, and the lovely repetition of stairs, and what is more generous than a window. A Vow by Edgar A. Guest. I might not ever scale the mountain heights, where all the great men stand in glory now. I might not ever gain the world's delights, or win a wreath of laurel for my brow. I may not gain the victories that men are fighting for, nor do a thing to boast of. I may not get a fortune here, but then, the little that I have I'll make the most of. I'll make my little home a place fine, a nice palace fine, my little patch of green, a garden fair. And I shall know each humble plant and vine, as rich men know their orchid blossoms rare. My little home may not be much to see, its chimney may not tower far above, but it will be a mansion great to me, for in its walls I'll keep a hoard of love. I will not pass my modest pleasures by to grasp at shadows of more splendid things, disdaining what a joyousness is nigh, because I am denied the joy of kings. But I will laugh and sing my way along. I'll make the most of what is mine today. And if I never rise above the throng, I shall have lived a full life anyway. Here ends the reading.
Now I walk in beauty. Beauty is before me. Beauty is behind me. Above and below me. Now I walk in
Hirayama cleans toilets. He wakes up every morning, he puts on his custodian's uniform, he gets a coffee from the vending machine outside of his really very minimalist apartment, and he goes into the streets of Tokyo to clean toilets. The toilets in Tokyo are much, much nicer than any public facilities we would generally find in the United States if you're creating a visual image. They're little buildings with sliding doors, very functional, and really aesthetically integrated into the landscape. And in this movie, Perfect Days by Wim Wenders, it seems to me that the toilets are unusually clean, even during the day when in use, but then again, I've always heard that the cities in Japan are a lot cleaner than our cities, so maybe that's realistic. The movie, by the way, came out in 2023. And that is Hirayama's day, and day unto day, and that is therefore Hirayama's life. It's a peaceful existence peppered with little encounters with people. Someone tucks a little tic-tac-toe game for him on a piece of paper into one of the nooks in the toilets, and he makes the next move and he tucks it back in. A friendly conversation with a local woman and her son, and meals and drinks every day with the local compadres at the bar or the restaurant. Every day, Hirayama goes to visit a favorite tree and take a picture of it, the same tree every day. And the light is beautiful through the branches. And at night, we see Hirayama's dreamscape, and it includes the tree, and all the dreams are depicted in black and white. It's very elegiac. Psalm 131, one of the simplest and shortest of the Psalms, goes like this. My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me. But I have calmed and quieted myself. I am like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. I find that to be the most zen of the Psalms. So different than the rest of them because so many of the Psalms are really high drama. Cries for victory and vengeance, desperate cries for God's help, wild grief, turbulent praise, lots of clanging music. But in this one, the psalmist is content, calm, quiet, and doesn't have much to say. And neither does Hirayama have much to say. Hirayama, whose days are simple, whose life is solitary until his niece shows up. His life is contemplative. It's the opposite of striving and ambitious. He doesn't have any to-do lists. He doesn't have goals to meet. The critical and public response in the United States to this meditative film was really interesting to me. It was obviously very diverse, as you can imagine. Our culture doesn't often highlight stories about people who live their lives within a really tiny sphere, who are non-ambitious. Protagonists in most of the stories, if you think about what you're watching and reading, most of our really popular stories are about doers, heroes, influencers, people whose lives really had a major impact in a big scope of the world. The Avengers. It won't surprise you to know that for those who didn't like this film, the most common adjective used to critique it was boring. That's 2 hours of my life I can't get back. Nothing happened. There was no plot. Yeah, a lot did happen, actually. But what happened really was just a little snapshot of a person's life with no explosions, no really big laughs, no wacky sidekicks, no violence, no cliffhanging suspense. What happened in this film was a life, just like mine or yours. A friend of mine who has just received a heart transplant spoke to me last night about the outpouring of love and support that completely shocked him when he went into the hospital for this profoundly serious medical procedure. And just for fun, he also had a kidney transplant at the same time. So really, really dire situation. We talked about the fact that most of us never get to see how wide an influence and how deep an impact we really have unless we have a crisis of this magnitude that causes that outpouring of concern and love and support. We make so much of an impact that we really never know. My neighbor, Larry Camp, a big, wonderful bear of a man with shoulder-length hair, with a big overcoat is how I remember him, used to walk by my house twice a day on his way to and from the Swampscott train station to go to his job at Gordon College as a teacher of sacred music. He was also a church musician. And Larry and I, because I would often just be outside and maybe walking the dog when I saw him, we'd have these little sidewalk chats, nothing of consequence, just pleasantries about the weather. How are you bearing up during the pandemic? What are you cooking? Stuff like that. When I learned that Larry had suddenly died this summer at 72, I experienced so much deeper a sense of grief and loss than I think Larry could ever have possibly imagined. His kindness, his presence, the eye contact, the pausing to share a moment in our ordinary days, his singularity was part of the fabric of our local community and far beyond. We don't need to accomplish big things in order to matter. John Benson, whose memorial service we will host in less than an hour. Could he imagine how shattered so many people would be by his tragic death? A humble man, a person who was so very contented to be behind the scenes, attending to tasks no one else ever had in their awareness a lot of the time. John was and is and will be, for our generation of this congregation, mourned as a VIP of the soul. His little life was a big deal. I'm not the only one who thinks about him very frequently. This morning I went outside and a very vocal crow started up with me from my tree over there. And when I went into the yard with my dog, of course I thought of John. During the pandemic shutdown, John and I kept up a really funny correspondence about birdsong. He was caring for his brother Joe and for young A, Joe's wife, and we were all confined to home, and birds gave us an opportunity to check in and talk about all manner of things. I would often record birdsong, and if I couldn't identify it, I'd share it with John and say, "Can you help?" And of course he could, right? He knew everything and everything about that bird, and it was just a wonderful entree to maybe touch base on some of the deeper things that were going on. None of these were perfect days, but they were nevertheless precious days. They were life, unfolding, noticing, loving this world. One of my favorite things about the movie Perfect Days was Hirayama's, our protagonist's, interactions with the people in his local establishments in Tokyo who served him his dinner or a drink. Each time someone handed him usually a bowl of noodles or a beer, they would say, and this is all in subtitles, so I'm not sure if the translation's exactly accurate, but they'd say something like, "Here for the end of a hard day." A friendly salutation to the working man. But I thought about that so often. It's such a nice toast, not just to offer respect and acknowledge that just to get through an ordinary day is a kind of heroism, but it also acknowledges now it's time to end the day and nourish yourself. It is such an important message that I don't know that we share too often in our culture, and it would be really a wonderful idea to adopt that practice and that concept. Sit, nurture yourself, raise a glass. The day has ended now. Put it to rest. Put all to rest. Know that this is enough. This is a life of dignity and integrity, to attend to your small corner of the world, to witness with reverence to its beauty, to serve with respect its needs, to unite our own souls with the great soul, which was our origin and which shall be our eternity. I close with these lines of blessing and benediction by the poet John Greenleaf Whittier, and it's actually the lyrics of a hymn, but I did not know that until this morning. Drop thy still dews of quietness till all our strivings cease. Take from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace. Amen.